What's happening, great people? Happy Think About It Thursdays. Welcome to the Revolutionary Research Roundtable, facilitated by yours truly, Dr. Rika. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so now. Like this video and share with your network, your folks, your people, all the stuff. In true Dr. Rika fashion, we always like to kick off our videos with the power word of the day. And today's power word is storytelling. Storytelling. As you all know, I love qualitative data, and storytelling is one of the probably most used qualitative research methods that there is. And so today is all about storytelling. And I want to just start with the definition. It is the activity of telling or writing stories. Telling or writing stories. So, with that, I want to get right into our session. I always forget y'all. I'll try to put us on a timer because I know people don't hang around for the whole time. And even when they do listen, I want it to be just enough so that you get something from it. You have an opportunity to think about it, and then you can share or pass on the nugget to either us in the comments or to someone you encounter in your day. And so to kick it off, just want to start off with, this tradition of storytelling. And so indigenous populations, they have always used storytelling as a way to teach lessons, impart wisdom, pass down traditions, and to ignite courage and strength and bravery in the next generation. And so for many indigenous peoples, that passing down of knowledge and experience came through the vehicle of orality and storytelling, right? And so oral stories are critical. The one thing I know for sure is that storytelling has been a way for us to save our culture, to capture our culture, all the things. And so today is all about that. And I'm going to kick it off just with a story. And if we don't pass them down, those stories get left behind, they get lost. And so that's the important thing is remembering to pass on those stories, that knowledge, that wisdom, writing it down when you can. I always say everybody got a book in them, different title, different number of chapters, could be a children's book, could be a chapter book, could be a biography or autobiography. It could be all of those things. It's what's up to you, but it takes for you to do that work to know for you what type of story you want to do. And so I am going to kick it off with a story about my great uncle. And so my great uncle was we Uncle Alfred. We affectionately called him Uncle Alfred. He was one of those just genuine solid people. He definitely served in the war. He did a lot of great things. He was just an awesome human being. But I have a story about his name that I wanted to share with you all. He was born in 1928 and just 2 years older than my grandmother, who was the baby of 7 children. And so she was born in 1930. He was born in 28. They were really close. When his mother was in labor with him, she was in the hospital in New Mexico. And what happened was when they got ready to name him, she told the nursing staff, the doctors, we're going to name him after, I'm going to name him after the president. And so at that time, you had Governor, um, Governor Al Smith of New York, who was running on the Democratic ticket. And then you had Republican from California, Herbert Hoover. Many of us know it's some type of if it ain't in your city or near your community, it's one in your state or in your region, and that's usually a Herbert Hoover school. Sometimes a middle school, sometimes a high school, sometimes an elementary, but it's there. And so when they left the hospital, Al Smith was winning the popular vote at the time, And so my grandmother went home. Everybody thought Al Smith was going to win because when she left, he was winning the popular vote. But but I'm gonna pause right there on that part of the story. So they go home, they start calling him baby Alfred, and their last name was Barkers. They the Barkers of New Mexico, came from Oklahoma and Arkansas. And I got a line, okay, I've been tracing it back. I got back to 1824. However, I digress, as I always do. So Uncle Alfred, we get home, they call him that all his life. So he gets to be 18 years old. He gets ready to go sign up for the military. So when he signed up for the military, he gave him his name, and they said, we can't find nobody named Alfred Barker. There's no record of an Alfred Barker. Well, come to find out, as many of us know, Al Smith did not win that election. Herbert Hoover did. And so by the time, they got home and started calling him Alfred, she forgot that she had said whatever the president's name. And at that time, you didn't need to have your social security, your birth certificate for many things. So they never looked at it till he got ready to go to the military. So he's like, no, my name is Alfred Barker. So when they looked at the roll, they had to check the record. The record said Herbert Hoover Barker. So he went on for about 18 years of his life going by Alfred Barker. So at this point, okay, to work in society and do all the things, you got to go by your real name. So coming up, I thought Uncle Alfred's name was Uncle Alfred. So in the 80s, maybe the 90s, I finally found out his name was Herbert Hoover Barker, and I got the story. And so all of his life, we continued to call him Uncle Alfred. Nobody ever just called, business wise, they called him Mr. Barker, they called him Herbert. That's what they went by. But pretty much the family and his close friends, everyone, he was known affectionately as Uncle Alfred. And he just was one of those individuals. I might see if I have a picture that I can add. I don't know how to do that yet, y'all. Y'all know I'm old school. I'm barely being able to work my little recordings and get them up. So at some point, next time I'll have a picture that I can pop up there about my uncle. And so appreciate Uncle Alfred and that story. And that's one I pass on, because the other thing is there's power in the name. Names are important. And although we affectionately called him that, his name was Herbert Hoover. And so I think too, just teaching young people about who they are and what their names, what they should go by, what people can call them. I know coming up, we get all these nicknames, and as we get older, sometimes we may not like them, sometimes we embrace them. But one young lady, I was doing a workshop for, it was like from trauma to purpose or something of that. Those were the topics. And I don't remember the exact name, but she came and she said, she said her middle name, I think it was. And she said, I've been called a whole lot of names, and I really now want to be called this name. And I've answered to him, and I no longer want to answer to those names. And while she didn't go into particulars, I could make assumptions that, some of them names that people called her, she may not have liked, but she learned to answer to, because that may be the way that she needed to navigate. And so just really thinking about like the power of names. Matter of fact, I'm gonna do I think I'm gonna do me a episode on, y'all forgive me, y'all know I'm gonna do an episode on the power of names coming up, because I think it's important. And I have many names. Depending on what you call me, then you'll know. Depending on what people call me, then I know how close and they are to me, and if they really know me. But I want to keep going. What is the value of storytelling? What is the value of storytelling? And so I think there's three important lessons we can share here about storytelling. Stories are more impelling than facts. I can sit in front of somebody that I think about the work that I'm doing, and I'm always trying to get in front of different people, especially foundations, because to do the work that I do around research and Black educators and their experiences with race and racism, you need data to back up what you're saying. And so sometimes it's the quantitative data, which y'all already know I ain't a fan of. However, it serves its purpose. And so just data by itself does not capture the full story. And so when I focus on this storytelling piece, this qualitative piece of storytelling, where um, the educators are answering responses in this long, not checking the box to say, oh, I've experienced this, but giving us some background That gives more life to the case that you're trying to make, and it becomes very compelling when I can tell a story of heartache and hardship and overcoming that, and or finding ways to, even in the midst of this like stress and uh just I don't want to call it chaos, but the micro and the macro aggressions. When I talk about the ways that teachers are able to navigate in the ways they've been able to create sanctuary and places of peace in that, that is more compelling than me showing them data that, Black teachers want fair wages and, we should what is the word, professionalize the teaching profession again, because it used to be that way, especially when men were predominantly teachers. And it's somehow, somewhere, it has just got pushed to this kind of glorified babysitters for some people. And I'm gonna tell you something: without teachers, oof, your job as a parent would be hard. So you have these different perspectives that your kid is being exposed to, and teaching your children how to practice some of the skills that they're going to need to be able to thrive in life. And so stories are more compelling than facts. I love stories. I always start with a story. I try to tug at the heartstrings so people understand the impact, not to try to, like, I'm begging for money, but more so that you understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're making a difference in the lives of those of the participants of the target population. So that's one. Two, stories change minds. So when I know I'm going to be speaking to someone, I got to do some background work. I got to do a little research on them, find out a little bit about their bio, their personal, professional, all the things. Then I got to think about my work and where's the intersection between what they've gone through, how they've overcome, where they are, and what I'm doing. And then my goal is to tug at those heartstrings. So stories change minds. When I tell a story how uh a teacher who was isolated in the school and found solace or found tribe in people who may not have been in the school. It could have been the parents. It could have been teachers from other schools. It could have been in the district office. It could have been that other lone one Black employee on campus that could be the janitor staff. These are the ways, right? And so when we talk about a sense of belonging, we're not just talking about for the young people. We're talking about for the adults in that community too. And so I think too, just making sure that we are able to communicate in a digestible way the things that connect to why we're doing the work, why it's important for you to partner with us on this work, and how it connects back to even your own experiences. So that stories change minds. Lastly, stories allow for participation. A lot of times when we're listening to people tell their stories, we making critical sense. We looking at it like, okay, oh, things might start sparking from our own stories as we listen to the stories of others. When I was doing some focus groups with the educators, I hadn't taught in the classroom in a really long time, but things that they started to say, I know I had experienced those, but they had been repressed because back then I didn't have time to sit and wallow and be over and trying to work through. It's like I had to go to the next thing. So you never even address it. And so what happens is, as you're listening to stories, your stories start to come up. You start wanting to write down. You start wanting to share in the conversation. And so I think overall, like the context, the background knowledge, and the significance are critical to us understanding what's happening now. And I'm gonna tell you why, because ain't nothing new under the sun. Old folks used to tell us that ain't nothing new under the sun. And so, with that, it's June 13th. This weekend, the world will be celebrating we'll be celebrating Juneteenth, which is actually June 19th, but it usually falls on the weekend in the teens, right? And so that's what is going to be happening. And we know that it was made a national holiday just the year before last. And so I want to give a little bit of story, a background story about Juneteenth, and then share a little bit about my own experience. And so we know that September 22nd, 1862, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which had, freed the slaves. The slaves would be free on January 1st, 1863. That happened, which was a moment of celebration for many, not all. At that time, there was no social media, there was no text messaging. All the ways that we get information so fast at our fingertips, even sometimes while it's happening, wasn't happening then. So, what ended up occurring was those in Texas, you got to think at that time, you know, that was Texas and DC and all that stuff, that's far apart. Texas did not get the news until later on. So what? Let me give you the timeline, and I'll come back to that. Okay, so in 1865, there was about an estimated 250 enslaved people in Texas. Okay, and so on April 9th, 1865, General Robert E. Lee, the chief general of the Confederate Army, surrendered. He surrendered at Potomac's courthouse. And so what ended up happening was the army in like around the Mississippi area, they didn't surrender until even after him, probably around June 2nd. And then on June 19th, 1865, we had Major General Granger, who had arrived in Galveston to take command and let the federal troops know that uh, the Department of Texas had to enforce emancipation of the remaining enslaved population that was there. So those are a couple of dates. So it was June 19th that occurred, right? And so what you see is that, getting there, y'all. What we also have to recognize is that there were still two Union border states who were not freed even at Juneteenth on June 19th, 1865. It wasn't until December 6th, 1865 that Delaware and Kentucky actually surrendered. And the 13th Amendment was ratified on December 6th, 1865. So I just gave you about 4 different dates. And some blacks, even more than that, thousands of blacks were not freed until after the treaties of the late 1866. And it was tribes such as the Cherokee, the Creek, the Chickasaw. So I got some Choctaw and Cherokee and me on my daddy's side, and others were forced to sign new treaties that required them to free their slaves. So it's a lot of things we are just not aware of. But I will say, the year after that year, in 1866, freedmen in Texas, they organized this day, which they called Jubilee Day, and that started in 1866. And so you continue to see, especially those living in Texas, celebrate Juneteenth every year. Many times, if the 19th was the 19th, however, is the day we set aside, and most times that weekend, which actually always falls on Father's Day weekend. And so I've had issues with this, the not issues, but I was kind of like iffy around this holiday as a national holiday and this date, because like I just said, I just named you 4 or 5 different dates. And in that, I will say a lot of people had just found out. It was people that, black people too, not just other races, that was like, I had never heard of Juneteenth. And I've knew about Juneteenth my whole life. Every year, which is Father's Day weekend, and Juneteenth always seemed to fall. They always fell on the same weekend. And in my mother's side of the family, my grandmother's sister, Auntie Maggie, used to always have Father's Day dinner. And Saturday we come down, they'd have Juneteenth at the park. I mean, wall to wall, everything. This was way back in the 70s and 80s. And everybody knew you didn't get it wasn't no invitation being sent out, wasn't no phone calls. Y'all know where to be Father's Day, on Father's Day, Juneteenth weekend. Y'all know where you're supposed to be. And when I tell you, as a kid, we would have dinner. The old, the men in our family would be playing dominoes and bid whist and cards. So would the women. Ace used to do the barbecue to meat. Uncle Charlie Bart used to barbecue to meat too, and Ace. I mean, everybody brought dishes. My mother's potato salad was requested. She have a special ingredient. They always requested her potato. This is way back. And maybe a little Mary Jane, my great uncle Charlie said, bring your Mary Ann, bring your potato salad and some Mary Jane. And so she would. And then, of course, the treat for the kids was, we got to see our extended cousins and make up dances and play double dutch. And then the other treat was my great auntie Maggie had an ice cream maker. And so every kid got a chance to churn that ice cream maker, and we'd have homemade ice cream in. And I tell you, that was a treat. That was a treat. And so for me, Juneteenth weekend meant family, it meant celebration, it meant freedom, it meant liberation, it meant community, it meant, we go up to the park and be wall to wall. I mean, that park would be covered with people. And we just had a good time. So we'd go there after all the festivities at the house, and then we'd in the evening and the day there. And it was just one of those just amazing, amazing days. And I'm so grateful that my family had always shared that. And so I know I'm getting close to my 20-minute mark. And so, what I want to do is make sure I share a resource of stories. So, where I work now is Black Female Project, and we have a podcast. There's about 4 seasons worth of episodes. I'm going to drop it in the down below in the info in just in the description so that you can go check it out. You can listen to it in your car, at your on your job, while you're cooking, whatever. But it's stories of Black women and their resilience, especially dealing with their professional work. So I encourage you to check that out. And um, as I always do, I want to end with just a reflection: head, heart, feet. So, head, what did you learn? Heart, how do you feel about what you learned? And feet, what will you do with what you learned? And like I say, if you did not learn anything and you that's fine, but drop us some knowledge on the in the drop some knowledge on the people in the comment section so we can learn from you. You have some stories. If you have a story about Juneteenth, just a family story that's superpower that you know you got to pass down, we'd love to hear from you. Drop it in the chat and comment. And that's my time. And so with that, I will say we're always grateful to share space with you. Um, we know you are solid people who are loving, compassionate, empathetic to the needs of others. And if all minds are clear, may the Lord watch between me and thee while we are absent one from another. Take it easy, be well, and enjoy your life. And until next time, I'll see you.